Eastern Front, June 1941. The first reports filtering back from Army Group Center spoke of an enemy tank unlike any encountered before, a machine that defied the established doctrines of armored warfare. German tank crews, seasoned by campaigns in Poland and France, had grown accustomed to a certain battlefield dominance, their Panzer IIIs and IVs having swept aside all opposition. Now, a new, unsettling reality began to emerge, threatening to unravel the very foundation of their tactical superiority, and with it, the swift victory promised by the Blitzkrieg. Oberleutnant Klaus Richter, a veteran Panzer commander with Iron Crosses from 2 prior campaigns, received his first detailed intelligence brief on the Soviet T-34, just after 400 hours on June 23. The briefing, delivered by a grim-faced intelligence officer, outlined a medium tank possessing sloped armor and a powerful 76.2mm gun. Richter's initial reaction, shared by many of his comrades in the 3rd Panzer Division, was one of skepticism bordering on dismissiveness. His own Panzer IV Als II, with its long-barreled 7.5cm KWK-40 L-43, had proven itself capable against even the heaviest Allied designs. The idea of a Soviet tank posing a significant threat seemed at first almost ludicrous. Yet, the field reports quickly began to paint a different picture. Unit diaries from the 4th Panzer Division, engaged near Brest-Litovsk, recorded multiple instances where 3.7cm PAK-36 anti-tank guns, the backbone of German infantry support, saw their rounds simply ricochet harmlessly off the T-34's glacis plate. These door-knockers, as the crews derisively called their primary anti-tank weapon, were utterly ineffective. Even the 5cm KWK-39 L-60 cannon, mounted on the Panzer III, a weapon designed to penetrate 59mm of armor at 100 meters, struggled to find purchase against the T-34's angled surfaces, which presented an effective thickness far greater than its nominal 45mm. The T-34's sloped armor was a revelation in tank design, a concept largely overlooked by German engineers who prioritized vertical plating for ease of manufacture and interior volume. This 60-degree angle on the frontal plate dramatically increased the line-of-sight thickness that an incoming projectile had to traverse, effectively doubling its protective value against direct hits. Combined with its wide tracks, which provided superior mobility in the muddy terrain of the Eastern Front, and its powerful V234 diesel engine, the T-34 was proving to be a formidable, unexpected adversary. Production logs from the Kharkov tank plant indicated a steady output of these machines, far exceeding initial German intelligence estimates. The psychological impact on German crews was profound. The initial laughter and bravado quickly dissipated, replaced by a growing unease. A damage report from the 11th Panzer Division detailed a T-34 that had sustained over 20 direct hits from 5cm and 7.5cm guns, yet remained operational, its crew eventually abandoning the vehicle only after its main gun was disabled by a lucky shot to the barrel. This resilience was unprecedented. German tank doctrine, honed on rapid maneuver and decisive engagements, suddenly found itself facing an opponent that refused to be easily destroyed, forcing a re-evaluation of established tactics and a desperate search for countermeasures. Eastern Front, June 1941. The initial encounters between Wehrmacht Panzer divisions and the Soviet T-34 medium tank were marked by a profound and unsettling surprise. German tank crews, accustomed to the tactical superiority of their Panzer III and Panzer IV models, found their standard anti-tank rounds ricocheting harmlessly off the T-34's sloped glacis plate, a phenomenon that quickly eroded their early confidence. The T-34's revolutionary armor scheme, comprising 45mm of cast homogeneous steel, angled at 60 degrees from the vertical, on its frontal hull, presented an effective thickness of approximately 90mm against horizontal trajectory projectiles. This design principle, known as sloping, dramatically increased the path a projectile had to traverse through the armor, enhancing protection without a proportional increase in weight, a concept largely absent from contemporary German tank design. German Panzer III Ausf H tanks, the backbone of the invasion force, mounted the 5 cm KWK-38 L-42 gun, firing the PZR-39 armor-piercing round. Ballistic tests conducted by the Heereswaffenamt in late 1941 confirmed that this round, at a range of 100 meters, could penetrate 59 millimeters of vertical armor. Against the T-34's sloped front, however, its effectiveness was drastically reduced, often failing to achieve penetration even at point-blank range. The T-34's wide 500 millimeter track links, a consequence of its design for the often muddy and snow-covered terrain of the Soviet Union, further complicated German anti-tank efforts. While not directly related to armor penetration, these tracks distributed the tank's 26.5-ton weight over a larger area, resulting in a ground pressure of just 0.64 kilograms per centimeter squared. This allowed the T-34 to traverse soft ground and deep snow that would immobilize or significantly slow down narrower-tracked German tanks, granting it a crucial tactical advantage in maneuverability. The initial German response was a mix of disbelief and urgent improvisation. Unit reports from Panzer Group II, for example, detailed instances where multiple hits from 3.7 centimeter PAK-36 anti-tank guns, firing their PZR-40 tungsten cord rounds, failed to disable T-34s. These smaller caliber guns, effective against most pre-war tanks, were rendered obsolete overnight, leading to their derisive nickname, Heeresankloppgerät, Army Door Knocker. The psychological impact on German tank crews was profound. The T-34, often appearing in unexpected places due to its superior cross-country mobility, became a symbol of Soviet resilience and technological prowess. Interrogation files from captured German tankers frequently mentioned the T-34 as a Schreckgespenst, a specter, due to its seemingly invulnerable frontal aspect and its ability to appear and disappear across challenging terrain. Engineers and ordnance officers quickly recognized the necessity of upgunning existing tanks and accelerating the development of new anti-tank weapons. The 7.5 centimeter KWK-40 L-43 gun, initially developed for the Panzer IV, was rushed into production, and the more powerful 8.8 centimeter Flak 18 anti-aircraft gun was pressed into service as an emergency anti-tank solution, demonstrating the immediate and severe threat posed by the T-34. The T-34's debut fundamentally reshaped German armored doctrine and hastened a technological arms race. The Wehrmacht's initial numerical and qualitative superiority in tanks, a cornerstone of its blitzkrieg strategy, was suddenly challenged by a single, unexpected adversary. The era of relatively light, fast-moving tanks with modest armor was definitively over, replaced by an urgent demand for heavier guns and thicker, sloped armor. The initial encounters with the T-34 on the Eastern Front generated a disorienting cognitive dissonance within the Wehrmacht. German intelligence, shaped by pre-war assessments and early campaign successes, had largely dismissed Soviet armored capabilities as crude and technologically backward. The appearance of a tank that could withstand the 3.7 centimeter PAK-36, the standard anti-tank gun of 1941, and even the 5 centimeter KWK-39 of the Panzer III challenged these deeply ingrained assumptions. Damage reports from the summer and autumn of 1941 reveal a pattern of frustration. A typical after-action summary from Panzer Regiment 35, dated October 1941, noted multiple 3.7 centimeter hits on T-34s that failed to penetrate. These reports often concluded with a bewildered observation regarding the tank's sloped armor and its unexpected resilience. The 52-degree sloped glacis plate of the T-34's hull a radical departure from the vertical armor prevalent in German designs, effectively increased the armor's thickness against incoming projectiles. A 45mm plate, when angled at 52 degrees, presented a line-of-sight thickness of approximately 73mm, a figure that exceeded the penetration capabilities of most German anti-tank weapons then in service. The 76.2mm L11 and F-34 main guns of the early T-34s, while not universally superior to German tank guns, possessed sufficient power to engage Panzer IIIs and early Panzer IVs at combat ranges. German crews, accustomed to their own tank's ability to reliably defeat Soviet armor, found themselves in engagements where their rounds bounced harmlessly off T-34s, while return fire from the Soviet tanks could often prove fatal. An interrogation file from a captured Panzer III commander in September 1941 recounted the shock of seeing a T-34 absorb multiple hits before disabling his own vehicle with a single shot to the turret ring. The ideological framework of racial and technological superiority, pervasive within the Nazi regime, further complicated the accurate assessment of the T-34. Official propaganda and internal military narratives had consistently portrayed the Soviet Union as a primitive, industrial backwater incapable of producing sophisticated weaponry. The T-34, with its innovative design and robust construction, directly contradicted this narrative. This disconnect between preconceived notions and battlefield reality led to a period of underestimation, where the tank's effectiveness was often attributed to sheer numbers or luck, rather than genuine technological merit. Production logs from Soviet factories, particularly the Kharkov Locomotive Plant No. 183 and Stalingrad Tractor Plant, indicated a steady output of T-34s even as German forces advanced. By the end of 1941, over 3,000 T-34s had been produced, a volume that underscored not only Soviet industrial capacity, but also their commitment to this particular design. This scale of production, coupled with the tank's combat performance, gradually forced a re-evaluation within German military circles, moving from initial disbelief to a grudging respect, and finally, to an urgent demand for countermeasures. The initial laughter had begun to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The initial shock of encountering the T-34's sloped armor and wide tracks gave way to a grudging respect, then to a phobos determination to overcome its advantages. German tank crews, particularly those in Panzer III and IV units, quickly learned that direct frontal engagements at typical combat ranges were often suicidal. Damage reports from late 1941 and early 1942 consistently indicated that 50mm KWK 39L60 rounds, the standard armament for the Panzer III OSF-J, frequently failed to penetrate the T-34's glacis plate at distances exceeding 500 meters. Even the longer 7.5cm KWK 40L43 gun, introduced on the Panzer IV OSF F2, struggled against the T-34's front at extended ranges. This necessitated a shift in tactical doctrine. Instead of relying on superior optics and gunnery to achieve first-hit advantage, German crews were instructed to maneuver for flank shots. Training manuals and field directives emphasized the T-34's weaker side armor, which typically measured 45mm, and its even more vulnerable rear, often just 40mm thick. The commander's cupola and the driver's vision port were identified as potential weak points. Though hitting these small targets in a dynamic engagement proved exceedingly difficult, the objective became to outflank the T-34, using terrain and smoke to conceal movements, then engage at close range, ideally within 200 meters, where even the 50mm rounds stood a better chance of penetration. Anti-tank gun crews, particularly those operating the 3.7cm Pak 36 and later the 5cm Pak 38, faced an even greater challenge. The 3.7-centimeter door knocker was almost entirely ineffective against the T-34's frontal armor, often ricocheting harmlessly. Interrogation files from captured Soviet tank crews sometimes contained accounts of German anti-tank gunners abandoning their positions rather than engaging a T-34 head-on. The 5-centimeter Pak-38 offered a marginal improvement, capable of penetrating the T-34's side armor at close range, but still struggled with the glacis. This led to the development of ambush tactics, where anti-tank guns were carefully concealed along likely Soviet advance routes, allowing them to engage T-34s from the side or rear as they passed. The strategic implication of these adjustments was a slowing of German armored advances. Rather than pushing forward aggressively, units now had to dedicate more time to reconnaissance and flanking maneuvers, increasing the time required to achieve objectives. Unit diaries from the Eastern Front frequently mention the frustration of encountering T-34s in open terrain, where flanking was difficult, leading to costly frontal engagements or lengthy delays while alternative approaches were sought. The emphasis on close-range engagements also increased the risk to German tanks, as it brought them within effective range of the T-34's own formidable 76.2mm gun. The introduction of the 7.5-centimeter Pak-40 anti-tank gun and the long 7.5-centimeter KWK-40 L-48 on later Panzer IV variants provided a significant boost in firepower, finally allowing German forces to engage T-34s frontally with a reasonable expectation of penetration at combat ranges. This new gun, with its higher muzzle velocity and improved armor-piercing rounds, could reliably defeat the T-34's glacis at 500 meters. Yet, even with these more powerful weapons, the lessons learned from the initial encounters with the T-34 persisted, embedding a cautious, flanking-oriented mindset into German armored doctrine that would continue to influence tactics even as more powerful tanks and anti-tank guns entered service. Recommendation: continue to prioritize flank attacks against heavily armored targets. The Eastern Front, 1943. The initial encounters with the T-34 had been a shock, a sudden, brutal awakening to the inadequacies of existing German tank designs. The Panzer III and IV, the stalwarts of the Blitzkrieg, found their short-barreled guns ineffective against the T-34's sloped frontal glacis, their armor vulnerable to its 76.2mm cannon. This stark reality, confirmed by countless battlefield reports and the examination of captured vehicles, spurred a desperate and accelerated push for a new generation of German armored vehicles, culminating in the Panther. The Panther, officially the Panzerkampfwagen 5 Panther, was not merely an incremental improvement, it was a radical departure, a direct, almost mirror image response to the T-34's revolutionary design principles. Its most striking feature, the steeply sloped frontal armor, was a direct emulation of the T-34. This 80mm thick plate, angled at 55 degrees from the vertical, presented an effective thickness far greater than its actual measurement, designed to deflect incoming rounds rather than absorb their kinetic energy directly. This design philosophy, learned at great cost from the Soviets, became a cornerstone of the Panther's defensive capabilities. Beyond its sloped armor, the Panther mounted the formidable 7.5-centimeter KWK-42 L-70 gun, a weapon specifically engineered to defeat the T-34 and any subsequent Soviet armored threats. This long-barreled cannon, with its high muzzle velocity, could penetrate 110 millimeters of vertical armor at 100 meters using its standard PZR 3942 armor-piercing capped ballistic capped APCBC round. At 1,000 meters, this penetration capability remained a potent 88 millimeters, a significant increase over any previous German tank gun and more than sufficient to defeat the T-34's frontal armor at typical engagement ranges. The Panther's engine, a Maybach HL230 P30 V12 gasoline engine producing 700 horsepower, provided a respectable power-to-weight ratio for its 44.8-ton combat weight, allowing for a top road speed of 46 kilometers per hour. This mobility, combined with its superior gun and armor, was intended to restore German armored dominance. Production began in January 1943, with the first significant deployment at the Battle of Kursk in July of that year. Initial teething problems, particularly with the transmission and final drives, plagued early models, but the underlying design was sound. The strategic implication of the Panther's development was profound. It represented a recognition, albeit a belated one, that the Soviet Union was capable of producing technologically advanced weaponry on a scale that demanded a qualitative response. The Panther was not just a tank, it was an embodiment of the German war machine's adaptation, a desperate attempt to regain the technological edge lost in the early encounters on the Eastern Front. Its introduction fundamentally altered the armored landscape, forcing the Soviets to accelerate their own tank development programs in turn. The Panther's arrival on the battlefield marked a new phase in the armored struggle, one where the technological arms race escalated dramatically. Its design, a direct descendant of lessons learned from the T-34, brought a new level of protection and firepower to the German Panzer divisions. The days of German crews laughing at the T-34 were long past, replaced by a grim determination to field tanks that could meet and exceed the Soviet challenge. The Panther was that answer for a time. The winter of 1943 to 1944 brought with it a new silhouette to the Eastern Front, one that, at first glance, seemed familiar. The T-34-85, visually distinct from its predecessors by its larger, more angular turret, began to appear in increasing numbers, a direct response to the escalating armor threat posed by the Panther and Tiger. This new variant was not merely an incremental upgrade. It represented a fundamental reevaluation of the T-34's combat role, shifting its primary offensive capability from maneuver warfare support to direct anti-tank engagement. At the heart of this transformation was the new main armament, the 85mm D5T gun, quickly superseded by the more robust and mass-producible ZIS S-53. This gun represented a significant leap in firepower over the earlier 76.2mm F-34. The 85mm projectile, weighing 9.2 kilograms, possessed a muzzle velocity of 792 meters per second, a marked improvement over the 6.3 kilogram, 655 meter per second round of the F-34. This increase in kinetic energy translated directly into superior armor penetration. Ballistic tests and subsequent combat reports confirmed the theoretical advantages. The 85mm ZIS S-53, firing standard APHE, armor-piercing high-explosive rounds, could reliably penetrate 100 millimeters of vertical rolled homogeneous armor at 500 meters. This capability directly addressed the frontal armor of the Panther, which measured 80 millimeters at a 55-degree slope on the glacis plate and 100 millimeters on the turret mantlet. While the extreme angles of the Panther's glacis still presented a challenge, the 85mm gun offered a much higher probability of a disabling hit at combat ranges than its 76.2mm predecessor. The turret itself underwent a complete redesign to accommodate the larger weapon and its ammunition. The new three-man turret, a stark contrast to the cramped two-man turret of the T-34-76, significantly improved crew efficiency. The commander, no longer burdened with gunnery duties, could focus entirely on situational awareness and target acquisition, a critical factor in the chaotic environment of tank combat. This division of labor allowed for faster target engagement and a more effective battlefield presence. Production figures quickly reflected the strategic importance of the T-34-85. From its introduction in late 1943, by the end of 1944, over 11,000 T-34-85s had rolled off Soviet assembly lines. This rapid rearmament ensured that the Red Army could field a numerically superior force of tanks, capable of directly challenging the German heavy armor. The earlier T-34-76, while still valuable for infantry support and exploitation, was increasingly relegated to secondary roles as the 85mm variant became the standard medium tank. The shift in the balance of power was palpable on the battlefield. German unit diaries from early 1944 began to record encounters with T-34s that possessed unexpectedly potent firepower. Initial dismissive assessments of the T-34's anti-armor capabilities, often rooted in experiences with the 76.2mm gun, were quickly revised. The T-34-85, while not impervious to German heavy guns, could now inflict significant damage upon Panther and even Tiger tanks, particularly at closer ranges or against side armor. This forced German tank crews to adopt more cautious tactics, eroding their previous confidence in their armor's invulnerability. The introduction of the T-34-85 marked a critical juncture in the Eastern Front's armored warfare. It was a clear demonstration of the Soviet Union's ability to adapt its industrial capacity and tactical doctrine to meet evolving threats. The qualitative gap, which had widened with the advent of the Panther, began to narrow, not through the creation of an entirely new tank, but through the decisive upgrade of a proven design. The battlefield would no longer be a place where German crews could afford to laugh. Eastern Front, late 1944. The laughter had long since died. Initial German assessments, often dismissive of Soviet tank design as crude and unsophisticated, began to undergo a stark reevaluation as encounters with the T-34-85 became commonplace. The perceived qualitative superiority of German armor, a source of considerable confidence in the early war years, was eroding under the weight of new Soviet capabilities. Damage reports from tank battalions provided a grim statistical accounting. By October 1944, a survey of Panther Auswaff A and G tanks disabled or destroyed in engagements with T-34-85s indicated a significant increase in penetrations through the frontal glacis plate, particularly at ranges exceeding 800 meters. The 85mm D5T and later ZIS SS-53 guns, firing BR-365P APCR rounds, demonstrated a consistent ability to defeat the 80mm thick, 55-degree sloped frontal armor of the Panther, a feat rarely achieved by earlier T-34 variants. The psychological impact on German tank crews was profound. Interrogation files of captured German tankers frequently contained references to the T-34-85 as a dangerous opponent, a significant departure from earlier characterizations. One captured Panzer IV commander, after witnessing a Panther's turret blown clean off by a T-34-85 hit, reportedly stated, "They are no longer the same." This shift in perception was driven by the tangible evidence of destroyed German tanks and the increasing casualty rates among their crews. Tactical adjustments became imperative. German doctrine, which had often favored engaging T-34s at long range, where their own superior optics and gun performance could be maximized, now faced a more challenging equation. The T-34-85's effective engagement range had substantially closed the gap, forcing German commanders to reconsider their approach to combat. The previous advantage of being able to reliably knock out a T-34 from distances at which the Soviet tank could not retaliate effectively was now largely negated. The qualitative edge, once a comforting certainty, had become a precarious balance. While the Panther still possessed thicker side armor and generally superior optics, the T-34-85's ability to engage and penetrate its frontal aspect at combat ranges meant that German crews could no longer rely on their armor with the same degree of confidence. The battlefield had become a more lethal, less predictable space for those operating German heavy armor. The grinding attrition of the Eastern Front demanded not just production, but constant adaptation. While the Panther represented a significant leap in German tank design, its introduction did not freeze the Soviet design bureaus in a state of paralysis. Instead, the emergence of heavier German armor, particularly the Tiger I and then the Panther, spurred the development of more potent Soviet anti-tank capabilities, culminating in the T-34-85. The T-34-85 was not a radical redesign of its predecessor. Rather, it was an urgent, pragmatic upgrade focused on increasing firepower and crew efficiency. The most significant change was the replacement of the F-34 76.2mm gun with the D5T or later the ZSS-53 85mm cannon. This larger caliber gun offered a substantial increase in muzzle velocity and projectile weight, translating directly into improved armor penetration against the thicker frontal plates of German heavy tanks. Damage reports from late 1943 and early 1944 indicated that the 76.2mm gun, while effective against Panzer IVs and Stug 3s, struggled to reliably defeat the frontal glacis of the Panther beyond very close ranges, and was almost entirely ineffective against the Tiger I's front. The 85mm gun, however, could penetrate the Panther's 80mm frontal glacis at ranges up to 1,000 meters, and its turret front at even greater distances. This shift in capability restored a degree of parity, forcing German crews to reconsider their tactical approaches. Beyond the gun, the T-34-85 featured a new, larger three-man turret, replacing the cramped two-man turret of the earlier models. This seemingly minor change had profound operational implications. It allowed the tank commander to focus on observation and tactical direction, rather than also performing the loader's duties. This division of labor significantly improved situational awareness, target acquisition speed, and overall combat effectiveness, reducing the cognitive load on the commander in the chaos of battle. Production figures illustrate the scale of this adaptation. While the initial T-34-76 models were produced in vast numbers, the transition to the T-34-85 was swift and comprehensive. Factory records show that by early 1944, the majority of T-34 production had shifted to the 85mm variant, with over 11,000 T-34-85s manufactured in 1944 alone. This rapid retooling and mass production ensured that the improved tank quickly became the standard medium tank of the Red Army. Confronting German forces with a numerically superior and increasingly capable opponent, the strategic implication of the T-34-85 was that it denied the Germans a decisive qualitative edge in medium tank engagements, forcing their more advanced designs to contend with a comparable threat. While the Panther possessed superior optics and often better armor, the sheer volume of T-34-85s, coupled with their improved firepower, meant that German tank crews could no longer rely on the easy overmatch they sometimes enjoyed against earlier T-34 models. This continuous pressure contributed to the unsustainable attrition rates experienced by German armored divisions. The T-34-85, therefore, was not merely a weapon. It was a testament to a doctrine of continuous, practical evolution under duress. It represented the Soviet capacity to absorb lessons from the battlefield and rapidly implement solutions on an industrial scale, ensuring that their primary tank remained relevant and dangerous throughout the war. The final production count, according to Soviet archives, reached approximately 21,000 T-34-85s by the end of the war.